Now as we move to verse 13 in Revelation chapter 11, the parenthetical has ended and we move into the conclusion of the second woe. We actually had an interruption in that sixth trumpet. The second woe and the sixth trumpet judgment concludes with an earthquake specifically in the region of Jerusalem. Remember, there was an earthquake in the region of Jerusalem at the time that Jesus was crucified. And at this time, 1/10 of the city is destroyed during this period of the tribulation, and 7,000 men died. And in keeping with the style of writing of 1st century AD, this specifically means 7,000 men, which could mean upwards of about 15 to 20,000 people altogether. At this time, we also see that there still remains hope for many among mankind, as the Apostle John writes that he sees the remnant among the cataclysm in Jerusalem showing fear towards and giving glory to the God of heaven. So there are people who are responding to God as God at this time. But it took an awful lot of death and destruction for that to happen. And that's a painful thing. That's something none of us desires. But we know sometimes God has to bring things to a real dire place for people to hear Him. Here is a profound thought that is illustrated in Scripture that is difficult for us to understand and maybe difficult for us to accept and very painful for us to realize. But it's God's truth. And it's how much He loves us. God will destroy hundreds of thousands of people who will never come to Him by faith to save a single lost soul, when He knows that lost soul has a heart bent towards Him. That doesn't make any sense to us. We say, why doesn't He give all those other people a chance? He did, but He's sovereign God. He knows the decisions you're going to make before you make them. That's the thing that challenges us. We don't realize God already knows the end of the matter. Or we may realize it, but we don't want to accept the fact that He already knows the end of the matter. We can't wrap our heads around the fact that just because God knows the decision we're going to make, it doesn't take away our freedom of choice. He just already happens to know how it's going to turn out. He already knows which way we're going to choose. But He didn't make the choice for us. He allowed us to make the choice. He just knows which way we're going to choose. This is why we are to trust in the Lord with all our hearts and lean not to our own understanding. That has nothing to do with making rational, reasonable, sensible decisions in your everyday life. We are to think like normal, rational, reasonable human beings in everything that we do. But when it comes to trying to figure out God, we are to trust God, because He is before all things and above all things. Now, verse 15, we come to this final woe. The last of the trumpet judgments is at once a proclamation and a warning, which culminates in a visual display of the power and glory of God before an unrighteous and Christ-rejecting world. Some people say, I won't believe God until I see Him with my own eyes. Well, folks, before the major calamities of the Great Tribulation commence, here's your chance. Just as the glory of God brought awe to the prophet Ezekiel in Ezekiel chapter 1 and the Apostle John in Revelation chapter 4, it now brings terror among mankind multiplied many times over from the fear it once brought the children of Israel as they wandered in the wilderness, as you can see in Exodus chapter 13 and Exodus chapter 34. In verse 15, John records that there are great voices in heaven proclaiming eternal Christ. In verses 16 and 17, the 24 elders, which are the same elders mentioned in Revelation chapter 4, worship God and proclaim the great power of God. Finally, in verse 18, they proclaim the Lord's fearful might, authority of judgment over both good and evil, and His final wrath upon all the ungodly to come. Lastly, verse 19 gives us two very distinct and significant observations revealed to the apostle as a terrifying view of heaven, which is revealed to the world, and the present location of the Ark of the Covenant is also given to us here. This final event is the third woe, where the terrors of the turmoil on earth and the fullness of the glory of God are momentarily revealed to the world. This display undoubtedly brings a state of great despair to those who yet refuse to acknowledge Christ as Lord, for they now know that there is no other hope for them in this world. You see, now they see the contrast between the glory of God and the depravity of man. They realize that there is a gap that they themselves cannot bridge. And for every individual that has decided that they will not seek God, their despair is now complete. Now, as we move ahead into the upcoming chapters 12 through 14, we will see a pause in the chronology of the events we've been following. After those chapters, we'll see the preparation for the bowl judgments in chapter 15, and then the bowl judgments commence in chapter 16.